I never thought I'd be standing in a field full of million-dollar tractors with nothing but Grandpa's old Massey Ferguson 135. The red paint had faded to a dusty orange, and the engine coughed like an old man with too many cigarettes behind him. But here I was, at the annual Farmer Olympics, surrounded by gleaming John Deeres and shiny New Hollands that cost more than most people's houses. The other farmers were already sizing up the competition. Their machines looked like they'd rolled straight off the showroom floor, complete with GPS systems, air conditioning, and enough horsepower to pull a freight train. Meanwhile, my tractor was older than some of their children. I'd inherited this beast 6 months ago when Grandpa passed. Along with it came the farm, 200 acres of debt and dreams that were slowly slipping away. The bank was breathing down my neck, and I needed a miracle. The Farmer Olympics offered a $50,000 prize for the tractor pull champion. It wasn't enough to save the farm entirely, but it would buy me time. As I climbed into the cracked vinyl seat, the familiar smell of diesel and old leather filled my nostrils. Grandpa had taught me to drive on this very tractor when I was 12. "She's got heart, boy," he used to say. "Sometimes that matters more than horsepower." The registration tent was buzzing with activity. Farmers compared specs and bragged about their latest upgrades. When I approached with my paperwork, the volunteer looked at me twice. "You sure about this, son? That's quite an experienced machine you've got there." I nodded, trying to project more confidence than I felt. Around me, I could hear the whispers starting. This was either going to be the biggest mistake of my life or the best decision I'd ever made. The laughter started almost immediately. As I drove the Massey Ferguson into the staging area, heads turned and conversations stopped. Then came the chuckles, followed by outright guffaws. A group of farmers near the concession stand pointed in my direction, shaking their heads in disbelief. "Look at that old rust bucket," one of them called out. "Did someone drive that thing straight out of a museum?" Another farmer, standing beside a pristine green John Deere 8370R, walked over with a smirk. "Son, you do realize this is a competition, not a vintage tractor show, right? That thing belongs in a scrapyard, not a pulling contest." I kept my eyes forward, focusing on the task ahead. The Massey Ferguson might not look like much, but I knew what she was capable of. Grandpa had maintained her meticulously, replacing parts when needed and keeping the engine in perfect working order. Beneath that weathered exterior was a machine built to last. The announcer's voice crackled over the loudspeaker, calling for all participants to gather for the rules briefing. As I walked toward the crowd, conversations quieted. I could feel dozens of eyes on me, most filled with amusement rather than respect. "Folks, we've got quite a lineup today," the announcer continued. "Some real powerhouses in the competition, and..." He paused, looking directly at me. "Some interesting vintage entries as well." More laughter rippled through the crowd. A few farmers made jokes about needing a push start or bringing jumper cables. One particularly loud voice suggested they should have a separate category for antiques, but not everyone was laughing. An older farmer with calloused hands and knowing eyes caught my attention. He nodded slightly, a gesture of understanding that spoke volumes. He remembered when tractors like mine were the backbone of American agriculture. The weight of expectation, or rather the complete lack of it, settled on my shoulders like a heavy blanket. The competition wouldn't start for another hour, giving me time to prepare. I popped the hood and began my inspection, running through the same checklist Grandpa had taught me years ago. Oil level, coolant, hydraulic fluid, tire pressure, everything had to be perfect. Other competitors were doing the same, but their preparations looked more like NASA pre-flight checks. Digital displays showed engine diagnostics, and mechanics in clean coveralls fine-tuned computer systems. Meanwhile, I relied on my senses, listening to the engine's rhythm, feeling for vibrations, checking for leaks the old-fashioned way. A young farmer with a brand new Case IH Magnum 380 parked nearby. His tractor gleamed under the afternoon sun, its 380 horsepower engine purring like a contented cat. He glanced over at my setup with barely concealed pity. "Need any help over there?" he called out, though his tone suggested he was more curious than genuinely helpful. "Thanks, but I've got it covered," I replied, adjusting the tire pressure one final time. He shook his head and returned to his digital dashboard, probably wondering how I'd even gotten past registration. What he didn't know was that I'd spent countless hours learning every bolt and bearing of this machine. Grandpa had insisted on it. "A farmer who doesn't know his equipment is just a man with expensive toys," he used to say. I checked the hitch point one more time, ensuring it was properly aligned and secure. The Massey Ferguson might not have the latest technology, but she had something many of these newer machines lacked: character forged through decades of honest work. As I climbed back into the seat, I could hear the announcer calling for the first round of competitors. My hands found their familiar positions on the steering wheel and gear shift. The moment of truth was approaching, and despite all the doubts and laughter, I felt ready. The first few tractors took their turns at the sled, and the results were impressive. The John Deere 8370R pulled 45,000 pounds, a full 300 feet, before the sled's weight transfer system finally stopped it. The crowd cheered as the distance was announced. Next came a New Holland T9. 700, its 682 horsepower engine roaring as it dragged 47,500 pounds, nearly the same distance. Each successful pull raised the bar higher. The newer tractors were performing exactly as expected, their advanced transmissions and computer-controlled systems working in perfect harmony. Farmers in the stands were taking notes, discussing horsepower-to-weight ratios and optimal tire pressure settings. I watched from the sidelines, studying the technique of each driver. Some relied purely on power, dropping the hammer and hoping their engines could muscle through. Others were more strategic, managing their power delivery and wheel slip to maintain momentum throughout the pull. The announcer kept up a steady commentary, highlighting the technical specifications of each machine. "That T9.700 is putting out nearly 700 horsepower at the PTO," he explained to the crowd. "These modern machines are engineering marvels." When my name was finally called, a hush fell over the crowd, followed by scattered chuckles. "Next up we have, let's see here, a 1982 Massey Ferguson 135. That's going to be interesting, folks." I drove slowly toward the starting line, the Massey Ferguson's engine puttering along at its own pace. The sled operator looked confused as he approached to hook up the chain. He'd been working with machines that cost 10 times what mine was worth, and now he was faced with something that looked like it belonged in a museum. "You sure this thing's going to start when you need it to?" he asked, only half joking. "She's never let me down yet," I replied, patting the dashboard affectionately. The crowd's attention was fully focused on our little corner of the field now. This was either going to be the shortest pull of the day or something nobody expected. The sled was loaded with 35,000 pounds, a conservative starting weight given my tractor's modest specifications. The announcer explained that they were being generous with the load, drawing more laughter from the crowd. I could see farmers in the stands shaking their heads, probably wondering why the organizers were wasting everyone's time. I positioned the Massey Ferguson at the starting line, feeling the familiar vibration of the engine through the seat. The exhaust pipe coughed out a small puff of black smoke, which only added to the crowd's amusement. Someone in the stands yelled, "Check your emissions, Grandpa!" But I wasn't listening to them anymore. I was listening to the tractor, feeling its rhythm, remembering everything Grandpa had taught me about coaxing maximum performance from this machine. The key wasn't brute force. It was finesse. The starter raised his flag, and I gripped the steering wheel tighter. The Massey Ferguson might not have the raw power of these modern machines, but she had something else: perfect balance and decades of proven reliability. Every component had been tested by time and found worthy. "Drivers ready?" the starter called out. I nodded, my foot hovering over the clutch pedal. The crowd had grown quiet, anticipation replacing mockery. Even if they expected me to fail, they wanted to see how spectacularly it would happen. The flag dropped. I released the clutch smoothly, feeling the tractor settle into the load. The rear tires bit into the dirt, finding traction that newer, heavier machines sometimes struggled with. The Massey Ferguson's lighter weight meant less ground pressure, but better grip when conditions were right. And today, conditions were perfect. The sled began to move, slowly at first, then with increasing momentum. The crowd's laughter died away, replaced by surprised murmurs. This wasn't supposed to be happening. The Massey Ferguson dug in, her rear tires spinning just enough to maintain traction without losing momentum. I could feel every nuance of the pull through the steering wheel, the slight resistance as the sled's weight transfer system engaged, the way the tractor's frame flexed under load, the steady rhythm of the engine as it found its sweet spot. 50 feet, 100 feet. The crowd had gone completely silent now, watching in disbelief as the old red tractor continued pulling the sled down the track. The announcer's voice had lost its earlier amusement, replaced by genuine surprise. "Well, folks, this is unexpected. The Massey Ferguson is still moving, and she's covered 150 feet now." I kept my focus on the task ahead, managing the throttle carefully. Too much power would break traction, too little would stall the pull. It was a delicate balance that required feel rather than technology. The newer tractors relied on computer systems to manage power delivery, but I had something they didn't: decades of experience with this particular machine. 200 feet. The sled was getting heavier as more weight transferred forward, but the Massey Ferguson kept chugging along. I could hear the engine working harder now, its distinctive sound echoing across the field. It was the same sound I'd heard countless times during harvest seasons, hay baling and spring plowing. The other farmers had stopped their conversations entirely. Some were standing now, trying to get a better view of what was happening. The young farmer with the Case IH Magnum was staring open-mouthed, his expensive machine suddenly looking less impressive. At 250 feet, I felt the first real resistance. The sled's weight transfer system was doing its job, making each additional foot exponentially harder. But the Massey Ferguson wasn't giving up. Neither was I. 270 feet, the announcer called out, his voice rising with excitement. "This is absolutely incredible." The finish line was just ahead, 30 more feet to a full pull. The last 30 feet felt like 30 miles. Every revolution of the wheels required maximum effort from both machine and operator. I could feel the Massey Ferguson straining against the load, her engine note changing as she dug deeper into her reserves. The rear tires were spinning more now, but still maintaining enough grip to keep moving forward. The crowd was on its feet. What had started as mockery had transformed into genuine amazement. Farmers who had been laughing just minutes earlier were now cheering, caught up in the drama of an underdog story unfolding before their eyes. 280 feet, the announcer shouted. "I can't believe what I'm seeing here, folks. This 40-year-old tractor is making a run at a full pull." I could see the finish line clearly now, just 20 feet away. The sled felt like it weighed twice as much as when we started, but the Massey Ferguson kept grinding forward. Her engine was working at maximum capacity, every cylinder firing in perfect sequence, just as Grandpa had maintained her to do. 15 feet, 10 feet. The crowd's cheering grew louder with each foot gained. Even the other competitors had stopped their preparations to watch this unlikely drama unfold. 5 feet from the line, I felt the tractor hesitate for just a moment. The load was enormous now, testing every component of the drivetrain. But then she found another gear, some hidden reserve of power that only comes from machines built to last. The front wheels crossed the finish line and the crowd erupted. I had done it, a full 300-foot pull with 35,000 pounds behind me. The announcer was practically screaming into his microphone, his voice barely audible over the cheering. But this was just the beginning. The real test would come when they increased the weight for the next round. The question wasn't whether I could make one good pull, it was whether the Massey Ferguson could keep performing as the competition got serious. The mood around the staging area had completely changed. Farmers who had been dismissive just an hour earlier were now approaching with genuine curiosity and newfound respect. The young farmer with the Case IH walked over, his earlier smugness replaced by honest admiration. "That was incredible," he said, extending his hand. "I've never seen anything like it. How did you know she had that kind of pull in her?" "Experience," I replied simply, "and faith in good engineering." The sled operators were busy adding weight for the second round. The load jumped to 42,000 pounds, a significant increase that would test every tractor's limits. Several of the smaller machines had already been eliminated, unable to handle the increased load. I used the brake to check the Massey Ferguson thoroughly. The engine temperature was running slightly higher than normal, but still within acceptable limits. The hydraulic system was performing flawlessly, and the tires showed good wear patterns. Everything looked solid for another pull. The older farmer who had nodded at me earlier approached with a knowing smile. "I remember when these old Masseys were the kings of the field," he said, "built like tanks, every one of them. Your grandfather would be proud." His words hit me harder than I expected. Grandpa had always believed in this tractor, even when newer, more powerful machines became available. He'd maintained her with the kind of care that came from genuine respect for quality engineering. The announcer called for the second round, and the remaining tractors lined up. The John Deere 8370R went first, managing a respectable 280 feet before the increased weight stopped its progress. The New Holland T9.700 did slightly better, reaching 290 feet before stalling. One by one, the modern machines fell short of a full pull. The increased weight was exposing the difference between raw power and efficient power delivery. When my turn came again, the crowd's energy was completely different. They weren't expecting failure anymore. They were hoping for another miracle. As I positioned the Massey Ferguson for the second pull, something remarkable happened. The crowd that had been laughing at me just hours earlier was now actively cheering for the underdog. Farmers in the stands were on their feet, and I could hear individual voices calling out encouragement. "Come on, old girl," someone shouted. "Show these youngsters how it's done." The shift in energy was palpable. What had started as a David versus Goliath story was becoming something bigger, a celebration of craftsmanship, persistence, and the enduring value of quality engineering. The Massey Ferguson had become more than just a tractor. She was a symbol of everything these farmers respected about their heritage. The sled operator approached with a grin. 42,000 pounds this time," he said. "Think she's got another pull in her?" "Only one way to find out," I replied, settling into the worn seat. The starter raised his flag, and the crowd fell silent with anticipation. This wasn't about mockery anymore. It was about witnessing something special. The other competitors had gathered to watch, their own machines temporarily forgotten. When the flag dropped, I engaged the clutch with the same smooth motion Grandpa had taught me decades earlier. The Massey Ferguson settled into the increased load, her engine note deepening as she began the pull. The additional 7,000 pounds was immediately noticeable, but she didn't hesitate. 50 feet, 100 feet. The crowd's cheering grew steadily louder as we passed each marker. The tractor was working harder now, but her rhythm remained steady and strong. Every component was performing exactly as designed, proving that good engineering never goes out of style. At 200 feet, I could feel the real challenge beginning. The sled's weight transfer system was making each additional foot exponentially more difficult. But the Massey Ferguson kept pulling, her rear tires finding grip where newer machines might have spun uselessly. The finish line was approaching again, and the crowd's excitement was reaching fever pitch. The second full pull sent shockwaves through the competition. As I drove back to the staging area, farmers were applauding and shaking their heads in amazement. The impossible was becoming routine, and everyone wanted to understand how a 40-year-old tractor was outperforming machines worth 10 times as much. The third round brought the weight up to 48,000 pounds, a load that would challenge even the most powerful tractors in the field. Several more competitors had been eliminated, leaving only the strongest machines for the final rounds. The Massey Ferguson was now competing against tractors that cost more than most people's annual salaries. I took advantage of the longer break to perform a more thorough inspection. The engine was running hot, but still within safe parameters. The transmission fluid looked good, and the hydraulic system was responding perfectly. Most importantly, the rear tires were showing excellent wear patterns, indicating optimal power transfer to the ground. A small crowd had gathered around my tractor, farmers examining her construction with newfound appreciation. They were pointing out details they'd overlooked before: the robust drivetrain, the efficient cooling system, the perfectly balanced weight distribution that gave her such excellent traction. "Look at that rear axle," one farmer observed. "They built these things to last forever." "And that engine," another added. Perkins diesels from that era were bulletproof. Simple, reliable, efficient. The announcer called for the third round, and the remaining tractors prepared for what many considered the real test. This was where raw power would either triumph or prove insufficient against superior engineering and technique. The John Deere 8370R went first, its massive engine roaring as it attacked the 48,000-pound load. The pull was impressive, but fell short at 275 feet. The New Holland T9.700 managed 285 feet before stalling. One by one, the modern giants were reaching their limits. When my turn came, the crowd's anticipation was electric. The Massey Ferguson had already exceeded every expectation, but this load would test whether miracles could happen twice. The 48,000-pound load was a monster. As I approached the starting line, I could see the sled sitting lower on its wheels, the massive weight pressing down on the track. This was the kind of load that separated the contenders from the pretenders, and everyone knew it. The Massey Ferguson felt different as I positioned her for the pull. The steering was heavier, the engine note slightly more labored even at idle. But there was still that unmistakable sense of readiness, the feeling that she had more to give when called upon. The crowd had grown throughout the afternoon, word spreading about the unlikely competitor making waves at the Farmer Olympics. Local news crews had arrived, their cameras focused on the weathered red tractor that was rewriting the rules of modern agriculture. "This is it, folks," the announcer said, his voice carrying across the field. 48,000 pounds. If this old Massey Ferguson can pull this load the full distance, we'll be witnessing history. I took a deep breath, my hands finding their familiar positions on the controls. Grandpa's voice echoed in my memory. "She's got heart, boy." Sometimes that matters more than horsepower. The starter raised his flag and time seemed to slow. The crowd, the other competitors, the cameras, everything faded away except the task ahead. It was just me, the tractor, and 48,000 pounds of dead weight. The flag dropped. I released the clutch with the smoothest motion I could manage, feeling the Massey Ferguson settle into the enormous load. The rear tires bit into the dirt, finding purchase despite the incredible weight behind us. The engine's rhythm deepened, but remained steady, each cylinder firing in perfect sequence. The sled began to move, slowly but surely. The crowd erupted in cheers that seemed to shake the ground itself. We were actually moving, pulling a load that should have been impossible for a tractor of this vintage and power rating. But moving and completing a full pull were two very different things. Every foot was a battle. The Massey Ferguson was giving everything she had, her engine working at maximum capacity while maintaining the precise balance between power and traction. I could feel the strain in every component, from the transmission to the rear axle, but nothing was giving up. 100 feet. The crowd's cheering was constant now, a wall of sound that seemed to push us forward. Other farmers were running alongside the track, caught up in the excitement of witnessing something truly extraordinary. At 150 feet, I felt the first sign of real struggle. The engine temperature was climbing, and the rear tires were spinning more than I liked. But the Massey Ferguson kept pulling, her decades of reliable service culminating in this moment of supreme effort. 200 feet, the announcer screamed. This is absolutely incredible. The Massey Ferguson is still moving. The sled felt like it weighed twice as much now, the weight transfer system doing its job of making each additional foot exponentially harder. But Grandpa's training kicked in, and I made subtle adjustments to the throttle, managing the power delivery to maintain momentum without breaking traction. At 250 feet, something magical happened. The crowd's cheering reached a crescendo that seemed to energize the old tractor. She found another gear, some hidden reserve of power that defied every specification sheet and engineering manual. The finish line was just 50 feet away, but it might as well have been 50 miles. The load was enormous, testing every bolt and bearing in the drivetrain. The engine was running at its absolute limit, the cooling system working overtime to prevent overheating. 40 feet, 30 feet, 20 feet. The crowd was going wild, farmers jumping up and down, their own competitive spirits forgotten in the face of this incredible underdog story. Even the other competitors were cheering now, caught up in the drama of the moment. 10 feet from the line, the Massey Ferguson hesitated. For one heart-stopping moment, I thought we'd reached our limit. But then she dug deeper, finding one last surge of power. The front wheels crossed the finish line, and the world exploded in celebration. The crowd's roar was deafening. Farmers were hugging each other, jumping up and down, and pointing at the old red tractor that had just accomplished the impossible. The Massey Ferguson had pulled 48,000 pounds the full 300 feet, matching the performance of machines that cost 20 times as much. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, letting the magnitude of what had just happened sink in. The engine was still running, though the temperature gauge was reading higher than I'd ever seen it. But she had done it. We had done it together. As I climbed down from the tractor, I was immediately surrounded by farmers, reporters, and spectators. Everyone wanted to know how a 40-year-old machine had outperformed the latest technology. The questions came fast and furious, but I could barely hear them over the continuing celebration. The young farmer with the Case IH was the first to reach me, his hand extended in genuine congratulation. "That was the most incredible thing I've ever seen," he said, shaking his head in amazement. "I've learned more about farming in the last hour than in the last year." The older farmer, who had nodded at me earlier, approached with tears in his eyes. "Your grandfather would be so proud," he said simply. "You've reminded us all what really matters." The announcer was trying to restore order, but the crowd was too excited to settle down. News crews were setting up for interviews, and photographers were capturing every angle of the victorious Massey Ferguson. The tractor that had been a source of laughter just hours earlier was now the star of the show. But the competition wasn't over yet. There would be one final round with an even heavier load, testing whether this incredible performance could be sustained. The question now wasn't whether the Massey Ferguson could compete, it was whether she could win it all. As I prepared for the final round, I knew that regardless of what happened next, we had already achieved something special. We had proven that heart, skill, and quality engineering could triumph over raw power and modern technology. The final round brought the weight up to an unprecedented 52,000 pounds. Only 3 tractors remained: the New Holland T9.700, a massive John Deere 8370R, and my grandfather's Massey Ferguson 135. The contrast couldn't have been more stark: 2 modern giants worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and one weathered veteran that most people would have sent to the scrapyard. The New Holland went first, its 682 horsepower engine roaring as it attacked the massive load. The pull was impressive, reaching 285 feet before the weight finally stopped its progress. The John Deere followed, managing 290 feet with its advanced transmission and computer-controlled systems. Then it was my turn. As I positioned the Massey Ferguson at the starting line, the crowd fell silent. The weight of expectation was enormous, not just from the spectators, but from every farmer who had ever believed that the old ways still had value in a modern world. I looked down at the worn controls, remembering all the times Grandpa had sat in this same seat. His hands had worked these same levers during countless harvests, his experience built into every component of this remarkable machine. The flag dropped for the final time. The Massey Ferguson settled into the 52,000-pound load with the same determination she'd shown all day. The rear tires found their grip, the engine found its rhythm, and we began the most important pull of our lives. Every foot was earned through perfect technique and unwavering determination. At 200 feet, we passed the point where most tractors would have stalled. At 250 feet, we were in uncharted territory. At 290 feet, we passed the John Deere's mark. The finish line was just 10 feet away when the Massey Ferguson gave one final surge of power. The front wheels crossed the line, and the crowd erupted in the loudest celebration of the day. We had done it. A full pull with 52,000 pounds, the heaviest load of the entire competition. As I shut off the engine and climbed down from the tractor, I was overwhelmed by the response. Farmers were crying, cheering, and celebrating not just a victory, but a validation of everything they believed about quality, craftsmanship, and the enduring value of machines built to last. Thank you so much for listening to this incredible story of determination, heritage, and the power of believing in yourself when everyone else has written you off. The Massey Ferguson 135, and I proved that day that sometimes the most unlikely heroes can achieve the most extraordinary things. I'd love to hear from all of you. Please write in the comments below and let me know what part of the world you're listening from. Are you from farming country? Do you have your own underdog story to share? And if you enjoyed this tale of triumph against the odds, please subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories from rural America. Remember, it's not always about having the newest or most expensive equipment. Sometimes it's about heart, skill, and never giving up on what you believe in. Until next time, keep those engines running and those dreams alive.